Chris Peaks here this morning with Brent Woodall, who is a candidate for Public Service Commission Place 1 or Place 2?
Place 1, Mr. Peaks.
Place 1. Okay.
Yes,
Brent, thanks for coming on this morning and giving me a chance to talk with me. I know there's been some talk about a hidden tax at the Public Service Commission, but can you walk us through that? Because I think there were some issues with it.
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the issue is really was one of those non-existent things, but I've heard some rumors of people saying, hey, that's really the legislature, and that's what I want to talk about because it's not just the legislature, as you can imagine. But I'll tell you this: the other night I was in Wetumpka at a candidate fair, and this lady came up to me and she told me right after I got there, she said, "I heard you in Montgomery last week." And she said, "I did not think you had told me the truth." She said, "When we got through," she said, "I went out, got in my car, and I called," and she called the name of a statewide elected official. And she said, "I asked him, she said, let me tell you what this person said," and told him what I had said. And she said, "I want to know, is that true?" And that person said, "Yes, it's true." And she said, "I'm voting for you." I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I need you to get 25 of your closest friends to do the same thing." But what this deals with, Chris, is the hidden tax that so many Alabamians who get their utilities from companies regulated by the Public Service Commission pay, thinking they're just paying their utility bill, but they're actually paying this hidden tax. It is again associated with those utility companies regulated by the PSC. I have termed it the hidden tax scam at the Public Service Commission. I don't know what else you call it. I really don't. But I do want to take a moment. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. But I do want to talk about how this works. And it really is very simple. But there is a statute, and it's the statute number is 29-11-1. And this statute was enacted by the legislature 9.5 years, or a little over 9 years ago, which is an interesting correlation between that time frame and the length of time that my opponent, the incumbent, has been in office, because he's been at the Public Service Commission for about 9.5 years. So he's known about this the entire time, no matter what he says. But this statute says that there is the authority of the legislature to transfer money from a state agency into the general fund. And Chris, you and I mean, I'm an attorney. I know that attorneys can make things very complicated. Sometimes that is done intentionally. And I'm going to read to you from this statute how an attorney came up with a way of saying tax without saying the word tax. Listen to this. It says, in order to provide for an increase in receipts into the state general fund for the funding of the operations of state government. Now, some lawyer probably got paid $2,500 to come up with a way to say tax without saying tax.
So what? So he's increased receipts.
We're going to get to the increased receipt.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sorry. But yes, that's it. It is in order to provide for an increase in receipts into the state general fund for the funding of the operations of state government. What is the point of, as you said, the increase in receipts? The purpose of that is for the funding of the operations of state government. And so what they're saying here is we came up with a tax that nobody knew about. In other words, it's hidden. Yes, as you pointed out, increase in receipts for in order to provide for the funding of the operation of state government. That's tax.
It is what it is. I mean,
yeah, I don't know what else you call it other than a tax. All right, so there it is in plain language. And then it says, to do that, it says there is hereby established the authority to transfer from the following state departments. And it lists them. It lists several of them. Number 9 is the Public Service Commission. All right. Number 1 is Alabama Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. And as I tell people when I'm going around the state talking about this stuff, I understand that if I were to go to the ABC board or ABC store and get a bottle of George Dickel, I'm expecting to pay tax, right? I mean,
Right.
you go, but if I sit
Good
down and
choice, by the way.
I'm paying my natural gas bill for the month, or I'm paying my electricity, I'm not expecting to pay a tax on that. I think I'm paying for utilities. All right. But again, the wording that they chose here, it says simply, there is hereby established the authority to transfer from the following state departments. And then it's only the authority. It does not say, again, words are very important. It doesn't say shall happen. It doesn't say will happen. It says it's simply they establish the authority to transfer. Now, later in that, it says, in that same statute, it says such transfers shall be for the purpose of providing funds to help offset the cost of state services provided to the several departments by the state. So again, it's the purpose of of this is for a tax purpose to fund state government to keep it working. But it doesn't say the transfers shall occur. It just says the transfers, in other words, what transfers do to happen shall be for that purpose.
So they don't have to go along with that then.
Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Exactly. You are dead on target, though, my friend.
And I don't want to get ahead of you too. If they don't have to go along with it, that would mean they have to take some type of vote, whether it's a yes or a wink and a nod.
Yes, sir. And that's what, Chris, that is exactly right. And the interesting thing is when those transfers are made from the PSC to the general fund, there is generally sent forth from the Public Service Commission a press release that says we gave back to the general fund, which isn't true because you can't give back to the general fund money you didn't get from the general fund, and they don't get any money from the general fund. Or they will say we returned to the general fund this money. No, they didn't, but they brag about it. But when you say to them, "Oh, hidden tax scam," their response is, "Oh, the legislature did that." Well, which is it? You take a lot of pride and you publicize the fact that money's sent back, acting as if you're the one who did it. But then when someone calls your hand on it and says, "Hey, hidden tax scam here," they go, "Oh, we didn't have anything. That legislature did it." But let me.
And I'd like to say too that we have now the nation's 15th largest bureaucracy, and we are dead last in everything, 52nd in some behind the territories. So they're just feeding this massive bureaucracy with Alabama ratepayers' money.
And let me tell you how they do it. And that actually brings us to the second statute I'd like to mention to you today. And that is section 37-4-23. That is where the legislature sets the fees that the utilities pay into the Public Service Commission. Because again, PSC is not getting money from the general fund. It's getting the money from the companies it regulates for the privilege of being regulated. And the legislature said, okay, here's how we're going to stack this. Here's how we're going to do this. And they came up with a sliding scale so that the more money the utilities make, the lower the fee is for every $1,000 of gross receipts that they make. But at the same time, it is in the statute, the amount they pay is based directly on, and I'm quoting here, it says the fees shall be measured by the gross receipts of such utilities. And then they go through several times, all utilities with gross intrastate receipts. Here's another phase, fees based on gross receipts. And it gets to the point, as I said, for everything over $1 million, they are going to pay $1.85 for every $1,000 in gross receipts. We both know that the utilities have cleared that hurdle. But think about the implication of that. Every single time, because we know that the PSC always ends up with more money at the end of the year than they needed to operate. We know that there's going to be that transfer they're going to brag about at the end of the year. And so every time there is a rate increase, and we can say we say rate increase on what you're paying for your bill, but there are other fees sometimes, like connecting solar panels to your home. Every time that there's an elevated amount in those fees, what's that doing? It's increasing the gross receipts of the utilities. So that increases the amount of hidden tax that goes into the PSC. And,
Ah,
and as I like to point out, every time there is an elevation in rates, or every time they're just kept at that level, every time there's a higher charge for, connecting a service or performing a service, 3 votes are basically being taken by my opponent at the Public Service Commission. One, it is a vote to increase the basic fee for the utilities. But because it's tied to gross receipts, that vote also raises the hidden tax amount that is being assessed to these people. Because for every $1,000, you got another kick into the hidden tax deal. Plus, there's also the vote, because we know the money is always transferred to the general fund. That is also a vote saying, yep, we're going to send this amount of money now to the general fund. So there are 3 votes right there that you could say clearly exist whenever there is such a vote for the increased rates, increased charges, or just to sustain a level that maybe could be lowered. But here's the other thing, and you brought this up a couple of minutes ago. Every year when the committee at the state legislature, when those committees meet, they want to know how much are we getting from these agencies listed in this statute 29-11-1. And a call is made to the Public Service Commission. How much y'all got to send us? An amount is given. That is an opportunity for the incumbent in PSC Place 1 to say, you know what? I don't think we need to send that money to the general fund this year. I don't think we need to send that much. Let's have a vote and send it to the utilities and say, return this to the ratepayers. Again, the statute simply says there is hereby established the authority to transfer from the following state departments funds in those amounts as are annually specified in the State General Fund Appropriations Act. They get that number to put in there from the Public Service Commission. I don't know of a single statute that says the Public Service Commission is prohibited from giving extra money back to the utilities and saying, give it back to the ratepayers. We need to stop this hidden tax scam. The way we can do that in Alabama is electing me as the Public Service Commission Place 1 commissioner. Because not only would I say, I'm not going to go along, you can call it a vote, you can call it acquiescence, you can call it whatever you want to, but agreeing to say, let's just give that money back to the let's give this amount to the legislature, is something that I would oppose doing. I would say, let's vote to send it back to the utilities and send it back to the ratepayers. The other thing is this, let's go to the legislature and say, hey, every year, millions of dollars go to the general fund from the PSC. Let's take number 9 off the list. Let's eliminate the Public Service Commission. We shouldn't be taking money from people who think they're paying their power bill, but yet they're being taxed. That's wrong. And if you're a conservative in Alabama, you shouldn't support something like that.
I agree 100%. How did you find out more about this, digging into this?
Well, when I was at, I've mentioned to you before, I was chief of staff for a member of the Public Service Commission for about 3 years. And it was during that time that I learned about this amount of money that was being sent to the general fund every year. And I realized that we needed to put a stop to it. It was after I had been talking about this for a while that I thought, I hate getting down into the weeds sometimes. But on other occasions, it's something you need to do. And I realized that I need to be able to talk about the details of this. I'm trying to do it in a way that summarizes what's taking place and to get my point across with people. I will tell you this, so far, I've had a couple of events where I have been able to actually sit down and talk about this in detail. One of those was the fair, the candidate fair the other night in Wetumpka. And because of how that worked, and it was a great arrangement by Eagle Forum. They did a fantastic job of organizing this, but people were able to come by the table that you had where you're standing there with your material. And a couple of times I had, the good sized groups, and I'm sitting there showing them, I said, you read this. And I would read it for them. But I said, any doubt in your mind, that's just a fancy way of saying tax. No, it's not. And then I would show them the gross receipts. And you say, okay, so what happens when there's an increase in rates? What happens to the gross receipts? And of course, they go up. What happens with the tax? It goes up.
Have they had any response to this?
Well, I won the straw poll the other night with my opponent and all my opponents and the incumbent being there and present in the room and having the same opportunity to talk to the same people. So, yeah, there's been a good reaction. And like I told you, the lady who in Montgomery, and I didn't get down into the depths of the statutes that night, but I had not heard until that point someone thinking that I had misled them when I said there's this tax, it's on your utility bill. But she thought that I was stretching it, and she called to confirm that with a statewide elected official and decided to vote for me. I've had people who have, one individual one time actually got mad when he heard about this, and not at me, but at the fact that this is actually included in his utility bill. And people have had vastly different reactions to it. But at the end of the day, when people have heard about this, whether it's anger, frustration, bewilderment, or what have you, they all agree on, despite their initial reaction, they all agree that this is wrong and somebody needs to do something about it.
How is the PSC members reacting to this?
Well, I have not had any direct communication other than the incumbent and he about this topic, but he on one occasion asked me, what's this tax you're talking about? We don't, and this is a verbatim quote, what's this tax you're talking about? We don't tax nobody. And my response to him is, you've been there long enough, you ought to know about it.
Say 9.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You've been there for 9.5 years. And again, you go back, the timing couldn't be better, because the way this statute talking about the transfer is written, it says that it began with, quote, the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014, which means that that fiscal year started October the 1st, 2013. And I may not be the best person when it comes to math, but if you subtract 2022 or 2013 from 2022, you end up with 9 years. So this had to be in effect sometime about the time he went into that office. And he should have known about it the entire time. And the thing about when you're there as a commissioner, when you hear we're going to slide $10 million over to the general fund, well, wait a second, where did that money come from? They ought to be asking these questions. Where did the money come from? Well, it came from the rate. If you want to do it, the slow method, do the two-step process. Where'd the money come from? It came from the utility companies. Where'd they get it? From their ratepayers. They all know that. They should know that. But the short answer is, where'd it come from? The ratepayers. So who ought to get the money back? The ratepayers. Who's being taxed? The ratepayers.
Brent, thanks a lot, man. I know you're running short on time. Is there anything else you can add to this, or you think that people should know?
Yeah, people should know they need to vote for Brent Woodall on May 24th in the Republican primary for PSC Place 1. But I should appreciate your time. Yeah, I've got a court appearance here in just a little bit on behalf of somebody, and I'm going to head to another rally this evening. But I'm having a great time getting out talking to people about this. And Chris, thank you so much for getting the word out about what goes on in our state government.
Thank you. We'll make sure we get this out.
Sounds good. Good to talk to you, man.